Welcome, Mr. President, to our show.
Thank you, Steve.
Let's talk politics. You're a political science and political history buff and teacher, professor. We just had the Republican primary in Florida just not too long ago, and Florida had to pay a price for moving the date forward. Was it a good price to pay? We lost half of our delegates.
I think it was a great price to pay. It was a win-win proposition for the state. We have a big say in who will be the presidential nominee against Barack Obama in 2012. All the attention that was paid to Florida of those 10-day period, and that meant a lot of dollars being spent in our state. But most importantly, it's almost like free advertising. Think if you're in Chicago or New York, you name it, and you look down at the presidential candidates in their shirt sleeves roaming across Florida. Wonderful weather. I thought it was a great thing. But I want to be a part of the nominating process, not the coronation process. And if we went late in the process, we'd be late to the game. We gave Iowa, we gave New Hampshire, we gave South Carolina the opportunity to shrink the field, but Florida clearly wanted a big say in who the nominee was, not just who's going to be nominated officially at the convention in Tampa.
You've been teaching about Florida politics at the college level and observing it. As a contender, as a successful candidate, did you learn anything different about Florida politics and so forth in this primary?
Well, I think that the candidates learned a lot more than we did. I mean, you and I have been in this business for 20 years doing this. But the candidates realized that Florida is truly that bellwether state. It's a very diverse state. We have not only a Hispanic population, but broken up within Haitian, of course, Puerto Rican, of course, Cuban. I mean, this is a mega state, and if you win Florida, I believe you'd be the next president of the United States. But they learned it's not a monolithic state. It is a very diverse state, and I think this is why we wanted that primary early. If you can win in Florida, you can be the next president of the United States, but you have to withstand the slings and arrows, the fact that it's such a big state, the grind and meeting so many people, and ability to communicate with so many diverse interest groups. I thought it was a great learning experience for all of us.
Does that mean that you think it might be over, that Mitt Romney is going to be the nominee since he won Florida?
Well, I know we're going to talk about gambling later. So if I'm a betting man, I would say yes, I think he's going to win. But I think it's a long slog. Not all states are winner take all. But one of the reasons why those candidates came here, it was winner take all, a big prize. Both Newt Gingrich and Mitt Romney started the week tied. Mitt Romney rose to the occasion, and that's why I think he'll be the favorite to win. When you look for great leaders in tight spots, what happens? You want to see if they rise to the occasion. Clearly, Mitt Romney did in both debates, first in Tampa, later in Jacksonville, and I think that's why he won so well. He proved he can handle the national spotlight in a good way, and taking on maybe the best debater in America, that being Newt Gingrich. Let's
talk about the 2012 session. It's your last session as Senate President. We know you got to pass a budget. You've got to do something with redistricting. Let's hit a couple of quick questions on those. They're very important. Let's talk about the budget. You mentioned recently that you were about ready to make your allocations to the budget for education, for health care, for transportation, et cetera. Does that mean that you are getting more confidence that you might get a good revenue forecast that you can rely on rather than having to wait till later?
Well, I'm still hesitant on that, candidly. I want to make sure that whatever budget we finalize is going to be a consistent budget that we can rely on starting July 1st, the first day of the new budget year. But let's remember where we're at. 6 months ago, the revenue estimator said we'd have $1 billion surplus. Now we have $1.5 billion shortfall. But I'm going to work with the number that came out in January and show respect for that. And I think you'll find the governor's and the House budget will be very similar to the Senate budget. And the reason for that, it looked a lot like the Senate budget from last year. We're showing a lot of respect for K-12 education. We're showing a lot of respect to the governor, how to make those tough calls on Medicaid. But we're going to offer a balanced budget, don't raise taxes, and we want to make sure that we're staying business friendly. So those allocations, I think, will be consistent, and I'm looking forward to working with the House and the governor again to make sure that Florida businesses know that they're going to have a stable government in Tallahassee. If it takes a little bit longer, so be it. But remember, we're 2 months ahead of time. Usually we don't even get up here until March. We got here in January starting our session. But I think we can work it out, but we just need to make sure that people check their egos at the door and we work this out in a thoughtful way, best for all Floridians.
I'm getting the vibes that you feel like that in the end, the budget often is an end-game kind of bill, that there won't be any huge differences between the House and the Senate. That will be hard to resolve.
Well, as you put your fist up, I hope not. And there could be. You know, I remember last year, I know there's a lot of talk about that. Nothing changed the last couple hours. The big issues were handled: Medicaid and pensions, balanced budget, no new taxes, putting on constitutional amendments to have a smart cap, meaning limiting government spending. Those are the big issues. And we're focused on two items, like you had said, the budget and reapportionment. The reapportionment looks good. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And the budget can work out. But again, I don't want to leave any money on the sidelines. If we can help our schools, if we can help our healthcare system, heck, if we can help our road system, that's a good thing. And so we want to maximize the dollars available and provide those opportunities. And again, we're here early. There shouldn't be any rush to judgment, especially when you're spending other people's money. And we're to always keep that in the back of our mind.
All right, let's talk about reapportionment and redistricting. I've been around for a while, and I've participated as a staff member in redistricting, and I've also observed a couple of them. It seems to me that the process is going along pretty smoothly and pretty rapidly, and the House and the Senate seem pretty close together. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. This is unprecedented. As you know, in the last 3 reapportionments, it's been a nasty, drag-out fight, personal and agendas, you name it. What do we do differently? It's the same thing we did with Medicaid. It's the same thing we did with property taxes. We took the time to listen to the people across the state. Don Gates, the incoming president, did a masterful job with 26 town hall meetings, working with people like Will Weatherford, listening to Floridians before we drew the first line. And that's why this has moved so, I said, not so quickly, but so thoroughly. And plus, we've been online for the transparency, and we really respected Amendments 5 and 6. I think that's really important. So when you look at this process, I think that because we listened before we drew the first line, we're in a great position to pass it out early, on time. But, and let's also show some contrast. The only way you understand how good this process has been is to show what other states did. State of Illinois, what did? They went in the back room, drew the line, and say, here they are. We did the exact opposite because we're the Sunshine State.
There's been a recent appellate court ruling, federal appellate court ruling, that Amendment 6 is constitutional. And that has to do with congressional boundaries. Will that cause any problems in the redistricting process?
I don't anticipate the problems. We're working under the assumption that both Amendment 6 and Amendment 5 would be constitutional. We're showing respect for the voters, and that's why our process really respected minority access seats and tried to keep more counties and cities in a single district as opposed to slicing them up as they had been done 10 years ago. And if you look at the map, just go look at it. You see a lot of county lines, a lot of cities, again, intact, because we want people to know not only who the representative is, but in areas that are of common interest.
Okay, let's move through some issues here kind of rapidly. There's still a lot of issues floating around out there besides redistricting and the budget. Let's talk about prison privatization for a moment. This is kind of blown up. It's been something that has been on the agenda last session, this session. The governor has pushed it. I know you are in favor of it. There are other Senate leaders who are in favor of it, some people in the House, as a cost-cutting measure and something to promote efficiency. But there's been resistance building up from senators whose districts house some of those prisons, from some law enforcement people and the unions, correctional officers. Do you think that in the end there will be some legislation addressing this? Because there's one of the things that you don't see out front a lot of times there's some big interest on both sides of this politically in terms of contributions. You've got some money that has come in through the private prison corporations who would like to get some business out of this. You've got some union money coming in through the unions that represent the workers. And both sides are about even. So there's politics, there's policy, it's a mix. Give us your inside view of it.
Well, that's why the press loves it. They're talking about these kind of issues. But let me tell you why I'm so passionate about it. We have a $1.5 billion budget shortfall, and we need to look for every opportunity to save money, period. We know that if we go towards the prison contracts, they will receive at least a 7% savings, not just 1 year, but year in and year out. And that's to the tune in the first year about $20 million, maybe as high as $40 million. And what is that? That's 400 teachers we can hire. Because if you ask me a very basic question, where do I want to spend the money? I want to spend money in schools. I want to spend money on environmental programs, not on a prison. And there's no public safety issue here at all. There's no record in the past of private prisons having breakouts. This is about saving money. And we need to make these tough decisions, because if we don't make the cuts here, they're going to come out of our schools. They're going to come out of our environmental programs, out of our health care programs. This is a no-brainer for me. I understand the disappointment of some people who might lose their job. But let's recall, we fought crime now for over a decade, brought it to its lowest level in over 30 years. And we should get the dividend from that savings, from that investment. Now there are 12,000 prison beds not being used. We better save the money. Because again, to show a contrast, would you hire a teacher with no kids in the classroom? Why would we go out and do the same thing and hire a prison worker for no prisoners? This is about common sense and saving money. And if we can't make the cuts here, we're going to do it at the wrong places, which means education and healthcare.
Return to my question. Do you think something in the end will pass?
I think it will. I can't guarantee it, but there will be a vote. And people are going to look at that board and say, are you willing to stand up and take on waste? Are you willing to stand up and save money? Because if someone came to you in a business and said, we'll do the exact same service for 7% less, every single business and individual would take that on. We're going to go on the board, and people are going to know where people stood when we could save money to this degree.
One more minute. Destination resorts, basically a nice sounding, easy issue, except they will house big casinos. So we're back again at the issue of casino gambling for Florida, whether there'll be an expansion of that, and also a related issue, internet cafes, which are basically provide people with the ability to play electronic slots. Same question. In the end, do you think there will be some kind of legislation that will pass that will allow for expanded casino gambling in Florida?
Well, I think something will pass the Senate, and I would use the casino term, I'd say 3-2 odds against passing it in the House. But again, we're a gambling state, whether you like it or not. If we're going to do it, let's regulate it the right way, and let's bring people from outside the state as opposed to just drawing Floridians. I think it's worthy of discussion. I hope the House pushes it through, but they're the House, we're the Senate, and sometimes we get along, and sometimes we just agree to disagree.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Steve.